may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, y'all know we had previously been doing that running back breakdown based on the ADP and just putting up two players and doing an in-depth breakdown and trying to determine who we thought the better value was. But over there on Patreon, some people said, Mason, I really liked the team-by-team breakdown format. Can we go back and try to make some more teams on that? So, yeah, and over there, they told me they wanted to see the New York Giants. So that is what we are going to be covering. We are going to be going through and doing an in-depth breakdown with the New York Giants, trying to identify what players we want to be buying, selling, or holding at their current ADP for 2021 fantasy leagues. But of course, guys, if you are over there on Patreon or even in the comment section below, reach out to me. Let me know what kind of videos you want me to be making over the next month, because obviously I want to make the videos that you want to watch, and that's going to really make everybody happy. So please, you have to let me know. I can't just be held in the dark. And of course, like I said, guys, we did have that rule where if we hit 250 likes on a video the first day it's uploaded, we will be putting timestamps on the video the next day. Now, we have not been hitting that mark, and I've been putting timestamps on it regardless. So please help me out there, guys. Let's try to get 250 likes on this video the first day it's uploaded. But that should be it. Let's go over to the New York Giants. Let's pull up Daniel Jones. And here with Daniel Jones, I'm going to be completely honest. If you are taking a zero quarterback approach in fantasy in 2021, this is the guy that you want to get. Now, obviously, with the quarterback position, what you are looking for is you are looking for a player that has the potential to have an elite efficiency mark with his touchdown rate, and also someone that can pick up yards and rushing touchdowns on the ground. And obviously, it's going to be much harder to predict the touchdown rate compared to the rushing capability. And the rushing capability is one of the main reasons I'm excited about Daniel Jones, but we'll get into depth with that a little bit later on. Right now, he is currently priced at 166 overall in ADP. And here, he's actually been falling down draft boards over the past few weeks for those redraft leagues. And I simply don't understand why. If you know why, or if you just have a feeling on what may be going on, please let me know down in the comment section below. But here, I mean, Daniel Jones is going into year 3. He just turned 24 at the time of this video being uploaded, and he was the 6th pick overall back in that 2019 draft class. And now if we go through Daniel Jones, I mean, it's just been two completely different stories with his fantasy production so far in his career. So after 2019, a lot of people were actually excited about Daniel Jones, as in 2019, he finished as the quarterback 13 in points per game. Now, he followed this up in 2020 with the definition of a sophomore slump, where he fell down to the quarterback 31 in points per game. And I know a lot of people are just going to be looking at this going, well, I mean, defenses kind of figured out Daniel Jones. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that they get Jason Garrett in there. I think that too many people are overlooking the fact that this offense relies so heavily on Saquon Barkley to move the ball down the field, and simply Daniel Jones did not have that in 2020. Now, if we look at Daniel Jones with and without Saquon Barkley through his NFL career so far, I mean, it is just two completely different stories. Where with Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones has played 12 total games. And in those 12 total games, he's averaged 20.1 points per game. He's averaged close to 250 passing yards, close to 2 touchdowns, and less than an interception a game. So with Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones looks like an above-average quarterback, where as soon as you take Barkley out of the game, I mean, it looks like Daniel Jones is one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL, where without Barkley, I mean, through 15 games, Daniel Jones averaged 13.5 fantasy points per game, which obviously is a horrendous mark, and he did this by barely eclipsing 200 passing yards a game, by averaging less than a touchdown a game, and by actually averaging more interceptions than touchdowns. So it's two completely different stories with and without Saquon Barkley. And now what you're having in 2021 is you're having Saquon Barkley come back, presumably playing the entire season. And also you have both Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, who should be quite possibly the best receivers that Daniel Jones has ever played with throughout his entire NFL career. So you're telling me that Daniel Jones is a quarterback that has averaged 20 fantasy points per game with Saquon Barkley in the game throughout his career. Well, Saquon Barkley is going to be there, so should you be expecting 20 fantasy points per game from Daniel Jones? Well, what if I tell you from there you're going to add in Kenny Golladay and you're going to add in Kadarius Toney? Then what are you going to be expecting? So I really think that we need to take a look at the supporting cast for New York and understand how Daniel Jones is being set up for success. Now, another reason that I actually like Daniel Jones as a zero quarterback target in 2021 is the rushing upside. Now, in 2019, Daniel Jones averaged 21 rushing yards a game, which isn't necessarily going to get you all the way there. I mean, you're not going to get very excited about it, but it's at least a positive sign that he can pick up points on the ground. And in 2020, he continues to improve on this, where he averages 30 rushing yards a game. Now, guys, if we change 30 rushing yards a game over to passing yards to see the difference in how important this actually is for fantasy football, I mean, 30 rushing yards a game is equivalent to 75 passing yards a game in fantasy production. So please do not overlook the fact that Daniel Jones is a mobile quarterback that can pick up points on the ground. He is getting an upgrade across his entire supporting cast, and all of a sudden, he costs significantly less in 2021 than he did in 2020. Daniel Jones, I really like investing into him. The one thing I will say is I'm worried about Jason Garrett. I think that is a legitimate concern. But like I said, guys, please let me know your opinion down there in the comment section. Now, a player that I am way more worried about with Jason Garrett than Daniel Jones, to be honest, is going to be Kadarius Toney. Now, y'all know that I mentioned Kadarius Toney is a positive for Daniel Jones and his development in 2021. And I want to be the first person to say that for the New York Giants, Kadarius Toney can be a good NFL wide receiver. You see this with him going with the 20th pick in the 2021 NFL draft. But I really want to hammer home the thought process, the correct thought process, in my opinion, that you can have two different things in football. You can have a wide receiver that is very good in what he can bring to his overall offense with his speed, with the fact that he is a dynamic player, he can play on special teams, and he can help his NFL team. And he can do this by stretching the field and making defensive coordinators kind of change their game plan, and he himself is not going to be getting heavily targeted and not be getting a ton of volume. So while Kadarius Toney, I agree, is most likely going to help the efficiency of the New York Giants offense, Kadarius Toney, in my opinion, is not someone that you want for fantasy football. Now, there are a few reasons for this. I already said that he looks like he's kind of going to be that wide receiver that has a lot of dynamic potential if he's utilized in the correct offensive scheme. He more so, in my opinion, looks like a guy that is going to be a field stretcher for an offense that's not going to be nearly creative enough to use Kadarius Toney to his full skill set. So with the matchup with Jason Garrett, I really think it's going to kill Kadarius Toney's fantasy value. And you throw in the fact that Kadarius Toney does not profile to be a wide receiver that sees a lot of volume at the NFL level. I mean, the first red flag that you have with the Kadarius Toney profile is the fact that he stayed all 4 years in Florida. And I know a lot of people are going to want to say that he's a transfer, blah, blah, blah. But no, it still remains the fact that he stayed all 4 years, which is a major red flag historically if you're correlating to fantasy production. Now, another red flag that you were saying is he never came close to meeting the production requirement that you expect for those collegiate wide receivers to translate that skill set to the NFL. So there are two massive red flags for Kadarius Toney. I think he's a wide receiver that if he was cast in the correct system, he could have fantasy success. This system is not going to be for him. I think he can help the Giants by stretching the field, but he is not going to help your fantasy team. Sell Kadarius Toney at his ADP. He is currently going around pick 170. I would prefer a few other wide receivers in that range. I'm not going to be touching Kadarius Toney for 2021. Now, another wide receiver that's coming in, and he is going to be an upgrade on what we had last year, is going to be Kenny Golladay. Now, if you're looking at Golladay, I mean, New York goes out there and they significantly invest into him. I mean, when Juju Smith-Schuster only went for $8 million, when Will Fuller only went for $8 million, I was surprised to see this large contract that you had for Kenny Golladay. And if you really take into consideration the amount of injuries that he has had throughout his entire NFL career, I think that this is even more surprising. Now, y'all know I am the first person to say that calling a player injury prone is usually the wrong stance. Usually a player will only get 2 or 3 injuries, then all of a sudden a player that was just more so unlucky is then labeled injury prone by the fantasy community, and it wasn't fair at all. I mean, you saw this with Keenan Allen a while ago, getting random injuries, a torn ACL, then a lacerated spleen, and somehow people connected the two, going, hey, Keenan Allen's injury prone when he wasn't. But in the case of Kenny Golladay, at what point do we look at this player and go, hey, he's dealt with stuff every single year of his NFL career? At what point do we go, he only played 5 games in 2020, and one of those games he didn't log a single catch because he was injured, and it's not like he had a torn ACL. I know he had a hip injury. I know the Detroit Lions were playing for nothing, and he really couldn't afford to suffer a serious injury because it would have messed up his payday, but still, I mean, if we go through, and since he came into the NFL, I mean, it's just injury after injury after injury. Now, if we go to the injury reports, in 2017, ankle sprain. 2017, that same year, hamstring strain. Then he has a chest strain in 2018. 2019, a concussion. Now, a concussion completely random. Doesn't fit the mold of any of these other injuries. I do not want to hold that against him at all. Then we get to 2020. He starts the year with a hamstring strain. Then halfway through the year, he suffers a hip injury. Please let me know if y'all think I'm reading too much into this, but I think this injury history for Kenny Golladay is starting to get concerning, even though I am always the person to say, don't label a player injury prone. The majority of the time, you really just see people overrating their ability to predict injuries at the NFL level. Now, if we were talking where he is going in 2021, he has an ADP of 55 overall. Now, I really don't like this price. I think that here you may have to call Kenny Golladay a sell as well. I'm not as just emphatic about it as I am with Kadarius Toney, though. So Golladay going to be halfway between a sell and halfway between a hold for me, just because I think you do have to be concerned. And I think the wide receiver 3 and 4 on this team are going to be a lot more active than most people want to believe. Now, before we get to the exciting players like an Evan Engram and a Saquon Barkley, let's go over and let's talk about the wide receiver 3 and 4 real quick. We are only going to talk about them for very brief. Now, Darius Slayton, the first guy I want to bring up, and here with Darius Slayton, I mean, he's currently not even being drafted in high-stakes fantasy leagues, and I think this is the right decision because you look at the entire personnel on this team. Kadarius Toney is the new Darius Slayton. Kadarius Toney is literally a 1-for-1 better replacement of Darius Slayton. I think he comes in and right away, Kadarius Toney just completely outplays him. I think he outsnaps him. Slayton, someone I am not too interested in. Don't really want to be rostering him at all. Now, on the other hand, with Sterling Shepard, this is actually a player that I think I would be interested in making a last round stack in a best ball format where we had Daniel Jones. For the reason of this is you're looking at Sterling Shepard as a player that has dropped insanely far, where you're going to get him with your last pick or one of your last picks in a best ball format. And if you're talking about the wide receiver personnel on this team, you have Kenny Golladay at the prototypical X. You have a guy like Kadarius Toney stretching the field. The one player you're missing out on is going to be that slot wide receiver, and I think Sterling Shepard still has a role in this offense. So if you're playing in a best ball format in particular, and you can draft Daniel Jones in the middle rounds and then get Sterling Shepard with one of your last picks, that will be a strategy I do not mind at all. Now, let's go over to the tight end position real quick, and let's talk about Evan Engram. And here with Evan Engram, he's a buy. I'm just going to say it. I mean, Evan Engram is someone that I think way too many people are overthinking. The main reason I think people are overthinking Evan Engram is the fact that he is a tight end that has suffered drops time and time again. And now drops are the most overrated thing in fantasy football because it's very easy to see. I mean, you get that vividness bias where you're watching the Giants game, you see Evan Engram drop that pass and you're going, what is this bum doing on the field? Get him off the field. But what you have to understand is the ability to get that target beforehand, the ability to create that separation is a lot more important and a lot more predictive of future success. I would much rather see a player be able to get targeted heavily when he's on the field and suffer from drops rather than a player that has a hard time getting targets yet catches every ball that he gets, because it's going to be easier for Evan Engram to fix that drop problem. We have seen this time and time again with pass catchers across the NFL, and even if he doesn't fix the problem, who cares? Yes, it may make Giants fans, it may make Evan Engram owners pissed when he does drop that pass, but if he is catching the ball 90% of the time and he can get those targets, that's something I'm fine with. And Evan Engram has dropped so far in fantasy because everybody knows that this is a problem. I mean, he is currently going at pick 130 in drafts right now. Now, I will say it's a little concerning that they do go out there and get Kyle Rudolph, because that says, hey, we aren't all in on a player like Evan Engram. Now, I do not think that Kyle Rudolph is going to be taking targets away. I don't think that Kyle Rudolph is going to be significantly hurting Evan Engram when they are both healthy, but it's more so going, Engram is a player that's also suffered with injuries. Engram is someone that clearly doesn't have the full-on trust from the coaching staff. So maybe if the drops continue, then they look to change things. But for the time being, he's going to be a player I'm investing into. If you go to 2020, I mean, he averaged almost 7 targets a game. He came away with almost 4 receptions and 40 yards a game as well, which is good for a tight end. One of the reasons that his fantasy production was so down is because he only came away with 1 touchdown. But we know touchdowns are the most volatile thing in fantasy. We understand that touchdowns are going to come if you're getting the volume. So I want to overlook that and face the fact that he was seeing close to 7 targets a game. And in 2019, this is a tight end that was having 8.5 targets a game. So Evan Engram, I think, is fantastic value at his ADP. I would love to go get Evan Engram on almost every team that I decide to pass on the tight end position early. Now, our last player, let's bring up Saquon Barkley. Now, y'all know earlier in the video, we were talking about Kenny Golladay possibly being injury prone, and I was saying I think a lot of players in fantasy get incorrectly labeled injury prone, and that's the case with Barkley. I think way too many people are reading into the fact that he has suffered 2 injuries that held him out a significant amount of time the past 2 years. The injuries aren't really linked whatsoever, so I think this is a case of bad luck. I think this is the case of small sample, and I'm standing by what I have said time and time again, that no running back in the NFL has the same type of talent as a Saquon Barkley. You saw this with his prospect profile coming in. You've seen this with his rookie and sophomore year production at the NFL level. Now, he tore his ACL so early on in 2020 that it's encouraging for him to be ready week 1 of 2021. He is someone that is going to be a prototypical workhorse. He is someone that's going to be getting receiving down usage every single time they're in passing down situations. And yeah, I mean, they really have nobody behind him. Wayne Gallman leaves. It's not like this is ever going to be a committee. Saquon Barkley is one of the safest workhorse running backs that you can invest into. Don't be surprised if you see him have a Christian McCaffrey type workload in 2021. And I think that you're going to have a player like Kadarius Toney being able to stretch the field for Saquon Barkley to have more open running lanes. So yeah, I am all in on Saquon Barkley. I mean, if you're getting him at the top of the first, that's a completely fine pick to start your draft off with. Now, because he is already going so highly, and it's not like I'm saying anything that's completely changing the game here, we're just going to have to label him as a hold because he is going in the early first round. I think that's a completely fair price. Just anybody calling him injury prone, anybody wanting to avoid because he tore his ACL last year, that's silly. Saquon Barkley, the best running back in the NFL. Do not overthink it. A workhorse guy, if you can draft him with the 4th, 5th, 6th pick, I mean, that is a complete smash. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I really owe a massive thank you for all the Patreon supporters in Ben, Braden, Zach, Ryan, William, Derek, Justin, Marshall, Tyler, and Eamon. Thank you so much, guys.